Welcome to Anime Fanfiction Audiobook. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 1, Shinigami. United States, New York. This metropolis is known as the center of the world. In addition to the bustling streets and the dazzling light, there were also some hidden dark corners. And the Hell's Kitchen located in Manhattan was precisely such a place hidden under the sun, where fish and dragons mixed together. This was a gathering place for countless gangsters and criminals. Even the government and the police were unwilling to or could not manage the areas that were beyond their jurisdiction. The day belonged to justice, the night belonged to evil, and this sentence was the best description of Hell Kitchen. But in the past few days, something strange had happened in the kitchen of hell, causing these lawless people to be terrified. "Hey, Jack," a black man said to the black man next to him, "have you heard? Recently, there seems to be a killer who specializes in picking on gangsters." "Of course, Bob." Jack shrunk his neck and looked around. Then, he lowered his voice and whispered, "My uncle saw with his own eyes the corpses of more than 100 people from Sky Dragon Gang." Hiss. Bob sucked in a breath of cold air and couldn't help but wrap his coat around himself. He shrank his neck and asked, "Really? Don't lie to me. Did your uncle really see it?" "Of course." Jack patted his chest and promised, "My uncle is from the Penguin Gang. At that time, several of them saw it. After my uncle came back, he was so scared that he had nightmares for several nights." Bob's eyes lit up. He immediately became interested and asked, "Tell me, what did your uncle see?" "This. My uncle won't let me tell anyone. If he finds out, he will break my legs." Jack hesitated. "Hey, brother." Bob was a little afraid. He forcefully hugged Jack and said, "I won't tell anyone. Don't worry, I will treat you to a drink tonight. How about it?" "Then. All right." Jack, whose mind was full of bars and young ladies, instantly threw his uncle's warning to the back of his mind and whispered in Bob's ear, "My uncle said that the one who slaughtered the Sky Dragon Gang is not a human, but a monster." "Monster?" Bob was stunned when he heard that. Then, his face turned a little ugly. "I treat you as a brother. Do you take me as a fool? Where did this monster come from? Is your uncle an illusion caused by sucking powder?" "No, I didn't lie to you. There really is a monster," Jack anxiously explained. "Impossible." Bob snorted and pushed Jack away. "You wanted to trick me into drinking, so you deliberately made up a monster." "Jack, I am so disappointed in you." "It's true, Bob." Jack saw that someone didn't believe him and immediately stretched out 3 fingers, swearing with a serious face, "I can swear to God that my uncle has really seen a monster." Bob still did not believe it. He said disdainfully, "Jack, we are no longer a child. I don't believe those ridiculous bedtime stories. Also, tell your uncle to drugless." "Fuck." Jack scolded angrily, "My uncle did not drug any powder. There really is a monster." "Is that so?" Bob crossed his arms in front of his chest and said impatiently, "I don't believe it. There can't be monsters in this world. If there really is one, then let it come to me. Do you see my fist? I will beat him until he kneels down and calls me daddy." "Huh?" Bob sighed for a long time only to find that Jack did not speak. Instead, he looked at him with horror. "Jack, what's wrong with you?" Bob was a little confused, thinking that he should not be so timid. "Bob. You. Behind you." Jack was full of horror at this moment. His pupils dilated, and his entire body shook like a sieve, as if he had seen something terrifying. "Behind me?" There was a trace of doubt on Bob's face. Then, he slowly turned his head, and his expression gradually froze. What replaced it was fear. What entered Bob's eyes was a terrifying mask that was as white as bone ash and looked like a wild beast. Immediately following that were a pair of dark and empty eyes. They were so dark that it seemed as if they could devour souls. Its body was as tall as 5 or 6 floors. There was a fist-sized circular hole in its chest, and its 2 arms were abnormally thick and huge. It looked like an extremely mutated giant ape. Pooh. Bob could even feel the air current that the monster was spewing out from under the mask, as well as a pungent smell of blood. It really was a monster. Jack was not lying. His uncle really saw a monster. Bob's pupils suddenly contracted, and his legs trembled wildly. He almost could not stand steadily. Human. Bob only had time to curse when he saw the terrifying monster open its bloody mouth at him. Poochie. Blood splattered everywhere, and blood and flesh were mangled. The white-masked monster's gums squirmed and chewed, and a scene of swallowing a living person appeared on the scene. Poor Bob. The moment it was set up, it was instantly met with retribution. From this, it could be seen that it was best to be honest and not stand casually. Bob. Jack's heart trembled and he was so scared that he almost collapsed to the ground. His face was full of fear. After swallowing Bob, the white-masked monster seemed to be unsatisfied. It looked at Jack, who was already scared to death, with its greedy red eyes. Help! Under the threat of death, Jack finally gathered his courage and ran out, shouting for help as he ran. Roar! The white-masked monster roared and raised his hand to slap him. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 5 huge fingers swept through the air, suddenly raising a violent gale that surged towards Jack like a huge wave. Ah! Jack's small body was like a leaf in the gale, and in an instant, he was sent flying and then heavily smashed into the wall. Bang! Jack spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt dizzy and dizzy. His internal organs were about to be shattered. He could not muster any strength. Boom! 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 Under the moonlight and the night sky, the huge masked monster looked extremely terrifying. It was walking towards Jack step by step. Help! Help! Is there anyone? Save me! Jack's face was twisted in pain and he fell into extreme despair. He cried for help with a face full of fear, but no one responded to him. Seeing the monster getting closer and closer and opening its bloody mouth, Jack was about to be swallowed alive, but a person suddenly appeared in front of him. The next second, before Jack could even see what was happening, he heard the monster's miserable scream. Sizzle! A deep blade wound spread from top to bottom, splitting the monster in the middle. Accompanied by a rain of blood, it shot into the sky like a fountain. Jack looked at the man in horror. In the dark night, the man was wearing a black kimono with a long white belt around his waist. The lower half of his trousers were wide, and he was wearing a pair of wooden clogs. That person had an Asian face, a head of light silver short hair. Under the moonlight, it was slightly reflecting light, making him look a bit sacred. His blue eyes were extremely deep, as if they contained the sea of stars. He had a high nose bridge, thin lips, and his eyebrows were like swords that were slanted to his temples. You. Who are you? Jack's eyes were wide open, his mouth wide open. That white-masked monster had actually been killed by this man with a single slash. So strong. He didn't even see the process of this person's attack clearly. You can call me Death God. Under the moonlight, Lord, who was dressed in a black kimono, had a gentle smile on his lips, like a sacred angel. Chapter 2 Ikaros, Shinso. Death God? Jack widened his eyes and shrunk towards the corner of the wall in horror. You are the god of death? Are you going to take away my soul? In the traditional culture of America, Death God should be dressed in a black robe, holding a huge sickle, and then taking away the soul of the dead, bringing the horrible image of being punished in hell. On the contrary, it was Laud. Light silver hair, deep blue eyes like the sea, and the gentle smile that hung at the corner of his mouth at that moment. No matter how one looked at it, he did not look like a god of death, but more like an angel, apart from having no wings. Laud could not help but laugh. He shook his head and said, "Don't worry, I don't understand that kind of death god, and I won't take your soul." I don't know why. Jack saw Laud's gentle smile, and perhaps he was infected. His fear gradually subsided, and his heart calmed down a little. "Thank you for saving me," Jack said gratefully. If not for this mysterious person, he would probably have become like Bob and become the monster's food. When he thought about how he would be cruelly eaten by that monster just now, Jack felt his legs go soft and his crotch became a little moist. "No need to thank me." Lod put on a gentle smile and said lightly, "Can you still move? If you can, then hurry up and leave this place." Leave? At first, Jack was still a little confused, but he heard a creepy roar. Roar. The cries were filled with deep resentment as if millions of souls were howling in pain. Jack was so scared that he hugged his head and cried, and he could not help but wet his pants. The moonlight was suddenly shrouded in shadows. Jack subconsciously looked up and saw several white-masked monsters falling from the sky. Boom 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 boom. These white-masked monsters were about the same size as the ape monster from before. They were almost 3 or 4 stories tall, and the style and shape of the masks were different. 1, 2, 3, a total of 6 hollows. Lod's expression was calm as he said indifferently, "So many have been born at once. It looks like Hell's Kitchen is a good place to breed evil." The dead soul's reluctance to part with the modern world, or other obstacles, after years of suffering, or artificial acceleration, finally transformed into hollow. Coincidentally, the Hell's Kitchen had fulfilled the birth conditions of hollow. What this place lacked the least was the tortured and angered dead soul. Therefore, hollow's birth rate was far higher than in other places. 6 monsters. Jack's heart stopped and his face turned pale. A pool of urine flowed out from his legs. 6? Lod smiled and slowly walked towards the hollow without any fear. "It saves me the trouble of looking for you guys. It can be solved in one go." Clang. Lod slowly pulled out a saber from the scabbard hanging on his waist. But when Jack saw the weapon, he immediately widened his eyes and opened his mouth in surprise. "That is a katana?" No. If it were a sword, wouldn't it be too short? But if it were a dagger, it seemed a bit weird. Although he had seen a katana on TV, Jack had never seen such a short katana that was as long as a dagger. But was this sword really useful? Facing several huge monsters, the man in front of him. Could it be that he was planning to use such a short weapon to kill? No, impossible. What a ridiculous thing. Jack could not imagine how this man in front of him would use this ridiculous weapon to kill those huge monsters. 1 against 6. Furthermore, he was using a weapon that looked like a toy. No matter how he looked at it, Jack did not think that this man could win. But that man was different. He was clearly at a disadvantage, but he seemed to have victory in his grasp as he confidently walked towards the monsters. Something strange happened. The 6 huge monsters, facing the man, actually showed fear at the same time and took a step back. Yes. They were afraid of that man. I didn't expect that. Lod still had a gentle smile on his face as he walked slowly. "You guys are clearly the ones who have the advantage in numbers. With so many hollow, would you still be afraid of me?" Yeah. They clearly had an overwhelming advantage in numbers, but they clearly felt the great threat of death gradually approaching. 1 step, 3 steps, 10 steps. As the invisible spiritual pressure gradually rose, the young Lod in their eyes became like a tall mountain. The heavy pressure made them almost kneel on the ground. "Are you still not going to attack?" Lod walked up to the 6 hollows and smiled. "If you don't make a move, you might not have a chance." Roar. As if stimulated by death, the 6 hollow eyes turned red, and a tyrannical aura swept all around, emitting a heaven-shaking roar. Kill. Hollow, who had the face of a shark, was the first to rush out. Sharp bone fins flicked out from his arms, and like 2 indestructible divine weapons, they instantly cut through the air and slashed towards Lod's waist. Swoosh! The fin-shaped bone sword slashed horizontally, cutting through the air like water. However, seeing that Lod was still smiling, he calmly tapped his toes lightly on the ground. Dang! Laud's feet seemed to step on an invisible staircase, and he ascended several meters into the sky with a single step. Boom! The fin bone sword's attack cut through the air, instantly stirring up a violent airflow that split the hard cement floor, causing a burst of dust and gravel to scatter. Jack did not have time to dodge. Several pieces of rocks pierced through his thighs and shoulders, and he could not help but let out a painful howl. At the same time, seeing that Laud had easily dodged the attack, another centipede-like hollow charged forward. Roar! Under the mask of the centipede hollow, countless sharp teeth spun at high speed like millstones, biting towards Laud, who was in the air. Laud moved a bit. Just a hair's breadth away, he once again dodged the attack. Roar! The other four hollows no longer looked on, their scarlet eyes flashing with a tyrannical aura as they rushed forward together to besiege Laud. However, Laud wandered among them under the bright moonlight and under the siege of hollow, his figure like a graceful dragon, as if he was dancing a dance on the tip of sword. Jack was trembling with fear as he watched from below. He could not help but break out in a cold sweat for this mysterious man. It was too dangerous. If there were even the slightest mistake, that man would be instantly torn apart by those monsters. Is that all? While dodging the attack, Laud also looked like he was at ease. It seems that you were only the lowest level hollow. Dang. Laud lightly stepped on the air, his entire body drawing an arc in the sky, and then he landed on a street lamp. Crash. The black Haori floated in the wind. Laud stood with his back to the moonlight. A cold light flashed in his narrowed eyes like a crescent moon. He said, 1 2 3 4 5 6, just in time, all of them are in a row. It saves me a lot of effort. It turned out, when the 6 hollows were chasing after him, they had quietly changed their positions. From Laud's direction, they were lined up in a neat row. Laud held the dagger-like short sword and slowly raised it to his chest. Sword pointed at them and then said with a smile, Ikaros, Shinso. Thank you for listening. Do not forget to like and subscribe.